Hey everyone, we're back. And now we're just going to kind of just keep rolling with the jQuery and see what else I want to tell you about it as we go along for some basic introduction. So let's start replacing everything in here. So we can cut out all this document.getElementById, blah, blah, blah. And we can just add this as a nice little click thing. Get rid of this complication. Then for our current value, instead of where we get the value this way with this get element by ID, we can just say let current value equals text input, and this time we don't give it the parameter, and it will just get the current value. Okay, cool. And then when we're setting the current value, we can again use this function to do it. We can say do it like that. So I'm just reorganizing the code a bit. This is called refactoring sometimes. So I'm just reorganizing the code to just look a little neater and be a little bit more readable while using jQuery. So you can see that cut down a lot of characters and it's a little easier to read. Now we can do the same thing down here. We'll change the add button, and again we get the current value using the text input thing. Okay, there we're doing that here. Then we do the save number thing doesn't change because it's not changing anything on the HTML. And then again, for setting the value, we just set it blank, just like we do here. Okay, cool. That's good. Now we can copy this again, and we'll do the equals button this time. Okay, and again, we get the current value, and this time we set the text input to the added value of the saved number. So again, I'm just copying over what we already did. And now I'm going to try to save this and see if it works. So let's go 90. Okay, so no, something broke right off the bat. Oh, I'm not giving it the little hash sign because we just use this get element by ID, which in itself doesn't use that hash sign like our CSS does. Like our CSS, oh, here we don't have one, but you remember that we use this hash sign to refer to an ID from the HTML. I forgot to put that in the little click thing. So let's refresh that. Refresh, and we'll see 96 plus 6 equals 102. Cool, it seems to be working. So we just replaced it with some basic stuff. So what's a few other things in jQuery that are sometimes useful? Well, the jQuery docs that we looked at had something called the ready function, and that was document.ready function. Okay, so now it's very common when we're using jQuery to put everything we write inside this ready function. It just makes sure that everything on the page is completely loaded before our script starts running. For instance, if this button didn't yet exist, when we run this function on it, it wouldn't be able to add the click listener to it. Another thing that's common is that we can set HTML with jQuery. So, you know, if we wanted to change, for instance, what's inside one of these buttons, if I wanted to change, let's say the 7, I wanted to make it 71. Again, this is just to show off. We would go number 7.html and we'd make it 78 or whatever. Load that, and you can see it changed it. So I could run that on a click event, right? I could combine that and say, oh, when you click a number, make the number 778. So cool. So, and it just did it once because it's running it every time, but the HTML is just, this is happening every time, but it's always being set to 78. So that's just showing, trying to get you used to this idea that like, oh, jQuery lets you manipulate the page and like do stuff. Oh, when you click something, you can change another thing, you can do another thing, and jQuery makes it easy to write this. And let's see, there's a lot of other things that are pretty useful, but let's just Google a couple things. Something that's fairly common might be checking a checkbox. So you will search something like jQuery check a checkbox, and there's lots of answers on this kind of thing. You know, you can, when you're using checkboxes, sometimes you want to manipulate things across. Again, I don't really want to give examples or get too crazy, but this is a common thing that jQuery is useful for, is setting checkboxes. So another one is setting the input value, which we do. We change the value. Another one might be scrolling the page to the top. So let's say scroll page to top. Let's say you have a little button at the end of your page, like you see sometimes, that has a little arrow or it says scroll to top. You click it and it goes to the top. Nowadays, actually, you can just do that with JavaScript. There's a built-in method that lets you scroll up to the top. But jQuery is what we used to use, and it's pretty useful anyway. And it can make it kind of smooth and nice. And you can see you run into these answers on Stack Overflow. And that's kind of the best way to use jQuery. I find that's much easier than trying to use the documentation. I can't really remember many times that I actually used the jQuery documentation. And sometimes you might run into that with libraries in general, that they're easier to find answers using Google and Stack Overflow than it is to find answers like just by looking at the documentation. So it's worth giving a Google, like library name and then what you want it to do, right? And you'll often find some good answers. So that kind of clears up our little look at jQuery. It's a nice way to use to structure your application or get used to a library a little bit when you're just starting off doing some coding. It's not super crucial. Maybe you won't use it again, but we're going to look in the next videos at more libraries because I really want to introduce you to this whole notion of libraries and using libraries and looking at documentation or Googling how to figure out how to do stuff. So we're going to look at a couple more in the next video. So we'll see you there.